Look, good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating today at the Farmers Forum. We will be having the President of AGRA join us immediately, and I'm sure colleagues online are ready for us to start this conversation. Please, are we able to see? Can we see all the team online? Great. Do we have sound? Malawi, can we hear you? Make some noise, wave your hands. Malawi, can you? Great.
Yes, we are here.
Thank you very much.
Greetings, Malawi.
Uganda.
Hello.
Can we hear you, see you from Uganda?
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And the Nigerian team has not joined yet, so we hope that they're able to connect quickly. So Dr. Kalibata will be walking into the room now, so I will hand over this session to the moderator to take it up from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that I'm audible and that you can all hear me. My name is Nozipho Shabalala, and it is an absolute pleasure to serve you as your moderator of this critically important conversation. We are, of course, in the Farmers Forum, in line with our overarching theme of pathways to recovery and resilient food systems. Now, as we get into this session, this Farmers Forum, let us be reminded that farmers are indeed at the center of our food systems. And so in this session, we're really going to be asking the question, how might we build food systems that come from and lead to equitable livelihoods? How could we reimagine social protection and innovative investments so that we could reduce the vulnerability of farmers whose incomes are not guaranteed? And also we will explore the opportunities that open up when we listen to more diverse voices, especially from farmers and from civil societies, as we really look to crowd in those perspectives as we look to pathways to recovery. And so we're going to go through a couple of sequences in the session. We're going to start off with a fireside chat on the state of global farming. We're going to make our way to a roundtable on equitable livelihoods. We're going to then land on a robust conversation on commitments that we are making to date from a farmer's perspective and farmers association perspective. But we're also going to look at regional cohesion and regional coordination and how we might do things slightly better there to make sure that we have that coordination. But for now, to extend her welcoming remarks to all of us, it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Dr. Agnes Kalibata, who of course we know is the president of AGRA and also the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on the Food Systems Summit. Dr. Kalibata, the floor is yours for your opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for Dr. Kalibata, and we will just continue with our flow of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. So what we will do is that we will, as soon as Dr. Kalibata is in the room, we will continue with the conversation and we'll welcome the president of AGRA at the end of our session to just extend to us her reflections and her welcoming remarks. For now, please help me welcome for our fireside chat on the state of global farming, two voices. I'd like to welcome Madame Elizabeth Nsimadala. She is the president of PAFO, which of course is the Pan-African Farmers Organization. Madame, welcome to you and thank you very much for being with us. And I'd also welcome Mr. Ajay Varjakar, who is the chairman of Bharat Krishak Samaj, which is a farmers forum in India. I'm going to maybe start, I do want to go to Madame Elizabeth, and I hope that she's still with us as we kick off the conversation. While I wait for her camera to go on, Mr. Jakar, let me go to you first. How would you describe the state of global farming at this stage? And more importantly, what do you think needs to be done for us to really entrench and realize equity and fairness in food systems around the world? If I might just ask you to unmute, please, Mr. Jakar. And for us to have your camera back on. Thank you, sir. You're muted at the moment, sir.
Yes.
There we go.
Can you? I had a bad signal. Can you repeat, please?
Okay. Thank you very much. How would you describe the state of global farming at this moment? And what do you think needs to be true for us to entrench equity and fairness in food systems for farmers?
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry for my bad connection. I really appreciate being asked to speak here at this event. To quickly summarize what's wrong with the it's nice that we recognize that there is problems with the global farming, and that's exactly why the UN Food Systems Summit is taking place, and Agnes has given commendable leadership in the circumstances that she's trying to create a balancing act. It's really nice of her for Africa to lead this. For solving this problem, we need to understand that after 25 years of ratification of WTO treaties on food and agriculture, 80% of the people live in rural areas, and most of those who are hungry are the farmers themselves. But they are supposed to grow and feed the rest of the world. So my submission is that the question deals with food value chain. So my submission is that we need to be able to prioritize what we want to do. And I would suggest, because most of the farmers are undernutrition or hungry, we should not look to prioritize long food value chains. We should look to prioritize reducing dependence of farmers on markets. And that would mean that we prioritize kitchen gardens, we prioritize backyard poultry, we prioritize community places where farmers can exchange food. And we do not focus on long food value chains of hundreds of kilometers. This will require far less investments. Not that long value chains are not required, but funds are scarce post the COVID pandemic. So we need to focus our scarce resources on tackling malnutrition of farmers by allowing them to grow their own food to the maximum extent possible. And it can be done. Even the FAO says that home gardening and production for home consumption are vastly undocumented. So I would suggest those who have tuned into today's program, and there's so many of them, for academic institutions to focus on studying the impact of home gardening and production on farmer livelihoods as a priority. And a home garden can supply a substantial portion of non-staple foods that a family needs, like fruits, stew. Leave it at that at the moment and say, this is what we need to focus on.
Yeah. Mr. Jakar, I think it's an excellent opening. Your emphasis on shorter value chains, being innovative around investments, but also being clear about what it is that we want to prioritize, and really putting smallholder farmers at the center of those actions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for your permission as I segue back to Dr. Kalibata, who I understand is now standing by. And so once again, please help me welcome the President of AGRA and the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on the Food Systems Summit, Dr. Kalibata, to extend her opening remarks to us in this session. I see she is ascending to the stage. Welcome, Madam. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good to see you again at this AGRF. Thank you all and welcome. Sorry, let me remove my mask since I'm alone. So like I was saying, thank you again and welcome to this Farmers Forum. This is one of the signature moments of the AGRF, and we are proud this year to be having this Farmers Forum. As at the kickoff of the AGRF itself. Farmers on this continent are at the center of everything that we do. 7 out of 10 people on this continent farm. So definitely it's no wonder that at an AGRF like this, we prioritize hearing the voices of the farmers who are feeding us, who are managing the land, and who live with everyday difficulties of agricultural systems. So this year we've looked at AGRF's link to the Food Systems Summit, and as Ajay was saying, I want to bring out that link very clearly. I want to make sure that we understand that African farmers that have been working so tirelessly, tilling the land to feed all of us, are actually now working against a huge cliff because of climate change. And you all, as farmers and farmers representatives, understand it. And we have a role in this. I'm not saying that Africa is not part of the problem. Everybody is part of the problem of climate change. Each of us individually is part of the problem of climate change. So we need, because the IPCC report that just came out shows that human activity is hugely responsible for what is happening in climate change. So we need to do something about it. But the truth is, the farmer is on the short end of this whole bargain. The farmer needs to see us doing so much better to reduce climate change, because there's no getting out of poverty for farmers with the current levels of every two seasons, one drought, every two seasons, one flood. Now, we come to the Food Systems Summit from a farmer perspective with this appeal that we need to fix climate change globally so that farming can be productive, especially for smallholder farmers. So smallholder farmers definitely do have other challenges. Some of the challenges they can start thinking about how to solve. Being part of markets needs that we understand and appreciate the value of standards. Being part of markets means that we understand how to harness and actually supply those markets. So yes, we do have opportunities and challenges we can address ourselves, and we should take advantage of them. Today, as a continent, we are importing 3 times more than we imported 10 years ago. But it's not because we can't produce. Our farmers can definitely produce. But we are not harnessing the markets, mostly because the cost of getting this food to markets is so much higher than getting it from some of the countries that are doing cheaper business. And this has to be fixed. So there are huge opportunities for us to turn. We cannot, maybe let me start with that. We cannot develop this continent on the back of 7 out of 10 people living in farming, which farming is unproductive and is a poverty trap. We cannot. So policymakers, businesses, everybody has to worry about the 7 out of 10 people that live in agriculture as producers, that now need to worry about how this comes together. Which takes me then to why we linked this to the Food Systems Summit. The Food Systems Summit is an opportunity to see how we work together for the benefit of farmers that are producing, but also the whole value chain of farming. We need to work with people in markets. We need to work with people in processing. We need to give farmers contracts so that they can produce viably. And we need to protect our environment, which is the point I started with. We have a responsibility. Africa has 17% of its land degraded from agricultural systems. Surely we can reverse this. And when we do reverse this, the benefit to the environment is huge. Surely this is within our control, because some of those lands are our lands. And where they're not our lands, our governments also have to do their part, because we actually need farmers to own land so that they can nurture it, so that they can own it and really be able to protect it, like we see in some countries. I come from a country where land is owned by farmers, and because of that, every farmer protects that land jealously. So if there's one benefit that can be huge for the environment, is ensuring that farmers have access to the land that they farm. So as we go into this Food Systems Summit, let's harness some of those ideas that are going to be very critical to moving us forward. very critical to ensuring that farmers can do a better job, and very critical to ensuring that farmers can protect their land and farmers can be part of a viable market Africa cannot develop, with 3 out of 10 people moving forward and 7 out of 10 people stuck in poverty because they are farming. So thank you very much. I look forward to listening to your ideas. I look forward to seeing and hearing how you plan to move forward and be part of committing to the Food Systems Summit, because the next 10 years is about really transforming food systems so that we can deliver on the 2030 agenda, but also so that we can have a viable business in farming. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalibata. Of course, that is the president of AGRA and the UN Secretary General Special Envoy on the Food Systems Summit, reminding us that we have a duty to ensure that farming is not a poverty trap and that we are not complacent with 3 out of 10 people moving forward, while 7 out of 10 get left behind. Now, we had already kicked off our fireside chat and some beautiful linkages from the comments from Mr. Ajay Jakar as well as Dr. Kalibata. I do know now that Madam Elizabeth Nsimadala is with us again. And so maybe, Madam, allow me to bring your voice into the conversation and to put this quick question to you, to ask you to share what are your thoughts on the state of global farming right now, and how do you think we might achieve equity and fairness in those food systems such that we're not leaving anyone behind, and certainly not 7 out of 10 people? Over to you, Madam.
I think, Nozi, and sorry, I had a power shutdown, but thank God I'm back, and I wish to thank Dr. Agnes Kalibata and the AGRF partners for really bringing farmers on board and giving us a platform by kicking off the AGRF 2021 with the Farmers Forum. It really shows the attachment and the importance they put on farmers as key actors in transforming food systems. Back to the question, I think first and foremost, as has been mentioned by Agnes, we need to see how we can move the 7 out of 10% of African farmers into the money economy. And we know that farmers usually get low returns because they are mostly engaged in the production part of the chain, which is usually longer and very riskier. And what is surprising is that this risk is usually never distributed across the value chain actors. And this is where now we need to see the rebalancing of power among the value chain actors. There is need to see a shift of focus for farmers to engage in other parts of the chain to make sure that they control the entire system. They need to engage in validation activities, because we know that the higher you move with the chain, the more the profitability. We also need to have a shift on the true value of food. When you look at the current food prices on the market, we are living in a liberal economy where we don't have food prices that are tagged on the value of food. So the current food prices does not factor in the health bills, for example, and the consequences that are generated by the unhealthy diets that we consume. And neither do they look into the cost of biodiversity loss and land degradation that Agnes has just mentioned. When you look at these prices, they are unpredictable. And the fact that they are unpredictable, they also make the entire agriculture sector more unpredictable and, of course, very unsafe for attracting investments. So again, we cannot talk about food systems without bringing consumers on board. So we really need to see how we can create consumer awareness for them to understand the importance of healthy diets and the importance of the value of nutritious diets.
Yeah.
The policies that are in place, we need to see how we can rethink them and make sure that they are farmer first. They respect the health of our environment, and also have a reward system to support farmers who are practicing the regenerative agriculture.
Madam, I'm gonna pause you there because I think it's an excellent contribution that you've put forward. I'm gonna go to Mr. AJ for a quick question and comment, and back to you before we wrap up the fireside chat. I want to bring in the climate challenge, Mr. Jakar, that both Dr. Kalibata and Madan Zimidala have spoken about. We have been speaking for years now that we need to adapt to the climate, but we still see that the rate of adaptation sometimes is quite slow. The question to you, sir, is what set of tools and information can strengthen the capacity of farmers to adapt to climate change and the reality we find ourselves in?
Thank you. That's a nice question. I think there need to be incentives for farmers to change, because farmers are grappling with economic issues, and their first priority today is how will they economically survive the season in which they're planting their crop. So there has to be incentives for farmers to make that transformative shift. If you look at the incentives which are being given, they are being given for carbon credits and for industry. And the trickle-down effect is supposed to come to the farming community. I think we need to rework on those incentives. But before I end, I want to add something very important, especially for Africa. Institutions, including all the donor institutes, including all the academic institutions, they only document success stories. And that's the big problem for Africa's growth story and the Africa Green Revolution. We need to document failures, because there is a tendency of agencies across the world to copy-paste questionable successes and do a copy-paste in Africa when they come with policy and their money. So getting money is not the key. The key is to get the knowledge right. And we need equitable regenerative systems. It's essential to learn from failures. And I have in India, in Punjab, where I'm from, where we had a green revolution, immense failures. So we as I would say that I'm advising the government of Punjab in India, which is a green revolution state, that we will welcome you at our cost in India if you want to come and see what mistakes we've done, because we really don't want you to take the same mistakes back home. So it's time to change. It's time to develop local knowledge, because we are dependent on consultants which come from the West. They do not understand the ground realities. We need to do away with them. We need to build local knowledge, local know-how, expertise, and capacity building. I think that's the key. If the key to green revolution in Africa does not lie on the fields, it lies in the air-conditioned offices which are pushing solutions which do not work on the ground.
Mr. Jakar, it's a beautifully provocative but also compelling thought. One, we need to incentives for behavioral change. But also we need to document failure and not be afraid of that. And we need to move the decision-making away from the air-conditioned offices to the field. I think it's excellent. Madam, final question to you before I move on. You spoke about, the true value of food not being known. I want to maybe tap into the fact that food prices are higher globally. How do we ensure that farmers get their fair share from produce? What do you think needs to change for that to be true?
Yeah, thank you. I think really fairness requires that the system of production, the distribution and trade are very open. And everyone, regardless of whether you're big or small, should be held accountable for real environment and social costs. So that is why we need to look at food in a holistic approach. We need to value the contribution that farmers are really making, so that whatever they get out of what they put on the market in terms of food should be equivalent to the investment that they put in. But before I conclude, I would just like to make a comment also on the issue of climate change and adaptation, because it is very critical for African farmers. And we all understand that weather patterns in Africa have become less favorable with increasing frequency of extreme hot and wet shocks. And this instability is, of course, expected to rise as a result of the increase in temperatures and a shift in rainfall patterns. So what I can say is that as farmers, we are putting in extra efforts to adapt to climate change.
Yes.
Though probably maybe that is not enough as we are rated. But when you look at most of the studies, as has been mentioned by AJ, the impact of adaptation mechanisms are usually dominated by the discourse. They usually quantify the current climate, they model the future climate change, and usually quantify their impact without really embracing the biophysical and the socio-economic parameters. But we also need to take cognizance of the fact that climate change has become so rampant and is taking different shapes. It is unpredictable, which calls really for real-time data to be able to assess these routine changes. And in terms of the adoption measures, we need to tap into the local specificities and be able to identify the local adaptation strategies. AJ has clearly mentioned that.
Yeah.
We need to put in use the indigenous knowledge, and the farmers' capacity need to be strengthened to make sure that we build their resilience to be able to adapt to climate change. And also when you look at the occurrence of the current pests and diseases that is happening oftenly, we need to see how to build the capacity of the farmers to be able, to adopt to improved varieties that are disease and drought tolerant. But also focus on increasing adaptation uptake by farmers. And this can be done by increasing investments, enabling policy environment, and also supporting farm organizations like the Pan-Africa Farmers Organization and our regional farmers organizations to be able to reinforce adaptation by our smallholder farmers. Thank you, and over.
Madam Ntimidala, it's a fantastic one, and I have run completely out of time. I do apologize. I think we were just getting warmed up. But just to thank yourself, Madam Elizabeth Ntimidala, who is, of course, the president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization, as well as Mr. Ajay Varjakar, who is the chairman of Bharat Krishak Samaj, which is a farmers forum in India, for bringing in the provocative but really robust insights in this fireside chat and getting us ready now to transition into a roundtable that really is focusing on equitable livelihoods. A very big thank you to you, Madam, and you, sir. I'm going to now invite Madam Agnes Kirabo. She's on my screen standing by. She is, of course, the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance. She joins us from Uganda. Welcome to you, Madam. I'm also going to open the space for the voice of Mr. Celestin Nga, who's also on my screen. He is the Chief Executive Officer of PROPAC, which of course is a regional platform of Central African farmers organizations, joining us from Cameroon. So a massive welcome to the both of you as we focus now just on equitable livelihoods. And Madam Kirabo, I'm going to come to you first. And the question to you, Madam, is if we are going to provide the structures of support and we are going to provide a conducive environment for farmers to thrive, where should public sector be investing to support smallholder farmer production?
Thank you so much, and good morning once again. Really delighted to speak after three very powerful persons speaking. And I thank them so much for the submissions so far that they have made. Number one, we are not going to run away from the fact that farmers' sole source of livelihood is the produce that they have produced. That's the reality. And the moment we continue mismanaging, devaluing, and neglecting the product that they have produced out of their sweat, then we are mocking them when we sit to talk about the issues of livelihoods. And Madam Elizabeth has actually picked one of the core issues that I had carried to this round table. The issue of the value of food in Africa. The actual value of food. We all know the value of a bar of soap. We know the value of a car. We know the value of a phone. We know the value of everything. But we have not set aside to attach value to the kind of food that farmers are producing, and especially farmers in Africa that are offering the world currently the most safest food, the most nutritious food. And we are not attaching value to that. What's happening to commodity pricing? What happened to commodity pricing as a regulatory framework? Such that when farmers are investing, in more often than not, when we are talking about farmers, we forget that farmers are investors. And they are also making investment decisions. And we instead condemn them for not having invested the way we would have loved them to invest. They cannot invest that way. They are not fools. They need to invest in knowing that after investing, my input is so much, and I'm calculating my cash flows, and my output is going to be so much. So now we have left our people, like Dr. Kalibata has said, 70% of Africa to invest without making a profit. And we are taking their product for free. So for me, this is what I want. I want public regulation, number one, to go to commodity pricing. And we attach value to Africa's food. We attach value to that safe and healthy food. All of us, we shall hurriedly run to invest in that area. The second issue, we cannot continue with an absentee state. We can't continue with an absentee state. Food is a human right. Food is a basic right. And now we are here talking about food as a source of livelihood. And it is being regulated by an absentee state. That is why many people in Africa are hungry. So if we have government investing, not only in policy, but also in institutions, in infrastructure, in being the referee of the game, to make sure that the 70% of Africa are equitably participating in the value chains. But as of now, we are treating farmers as objects. We do not understand them, and our attempts to understand farmers is to manage them, to control their system, to control their effort, to control their sweat. I don't think we can continue that way. So governments have to move away from only creating an enabling environment, which is not an enabling environment for our farmers, but an enabling environment for the private sector that comes to grab, to snatch, to take away what the farmers have painfully invested in.
Madam Kirabo, it's a passionate and it's a fiery contribution, and one that is so robust. You've called for public regulation to really be stepped up, essentially, so that we can really put a price to the value of food, commodity pricing being the mechanism that you're putting forward. You've spoken very candidly about how we need to ensure that we're not operating from absent states, in the absence of institutions, in the absence of infrastructure, in the absence of rule setting. And so all of these points, I think, are being picked up by audiences across the continent. Thank you very much for also highlighting the fact that farmers are in themselves investors. And so we've also got to bring that back into the frame. So allow me then to go to Mr. Celestine Nga. Sir, as I come to you, there have been many farmer dialogues organized by different farmer organizations. What, in your view, are some of the important outcomes that are coming out of these dialogues from a farmer perspective? And do you think that we're making progress? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam. I think you have a translation because I will speak in French. Merci beaucoup, Madame. Nous voulons remercier African Green Revolution pour nous avoir invités à participer à cet important sommet et à nous donner l'opportunité de partager la perception et les propositions des petits producteurs d'Afrique centrale sur le débat sur les systèmes alimentaires. Bon, l'Afrique centrale regroupe 10 pays et occupe une superficie de plus de 6 millions de kilomètres carrés avec près de 200 millions d'habitants. C'est une partie du continent riche en terres agricoles, en ressources naturelles et halieutiques et en diversité bioculturelle, qui sont tous des atouts essentiels pour le bon fonctionnement des systèmes alimentaires. Cependant, elle est la moins sécurisée sur le plan alimentaire et nutritionnel. En effet, plus d'un quart de la population souffre de la faim et la situation nutritionnelle des groupes les plus vulnérables se détériore davantage en raison des effets sanitaires et socio-économiques de la COVID-19. Plus de 60% d'actifs agricoles sont de petits exploitants agricoles familiaux, avec peu de ressources financières, un difficile accès au foncier et à l'information. Et ils font face à de nombreux défis, allant du simple accès aux intrants de qualité et à l'augmentation de la production et des revenus, à l'accès au marché, aux infrastructures physiques, aux infrastructures immatérielles facilitatrices, de telle sorte que les pertes post-récolte restent anormalement élevées parce qu'ils peinent à évacuer leurs produits et à les distribuer. Outre les contraintes politiques, institutionnelles et opérationnelles, l'Afrique centrale fait face à une croissance démographique élevée, plus de 3% en moyenne, supérieure à celle de sa production, environ 2%. Une urbanisation qui explose et reste exposée aux conflits internes. Il y a des conflits sociopolitiques, il y a des conflits entre agriculteurs et éleveurs qui sont à l'origine de l'insécurité dans certains bassins de production. Au choc climatique aussi, la sécheresse, les pluies diluviennes, la dégradation des sols, la perte de la biodiversité, la menace sur le pastoralisme, la baisse des stocks de pêche, et puis aussi les chocs économiques et aux maladies ravageurs. Face à cet ensemble de contraintes, endogènes et exogènes, le secteur agricole en Afrique centrale connaît des contre-performances qui obligent les pays à importer d'importantes quantités de céréales, notamment le riz, le blé, le maïs, etc., et puis de poissons, d'huile végétale, pour compenser leur déficit de production, creusant ainsi le déficit de leur balance commerciale. Considérant qu'un système alimentaire fonctionne bien lorsque les variables suivantes sont en place: la nourriture est accessible, inclusive et suffisante, les aliments sont sains, nutritifs et équilibrés, la nourriture est produite de manière écologique et respectueuse de l'environnement, les opérations tout au long de la chaîne de valeur alimentaire sont durables, la nourriture est diversifiée, les cultures, l'élevage et les produits halieutiques. Alors, les OP d'Afrique centrale partagent la vision stratégique suivante en vue de transformer le système alimentaire actuel en système alimentaire innovant. 1. Parvenir à l'autosuffisance alimentaire sur les produits de base, notamment le riz, le poisson, la volaille, d'ici 2030. Libérer le potentiel de bananes et plantains, ainsi que les plantes à racines et tubercules. Réduire progressivement les importations de riz et de blé et favoriser la production et la consommation des produits locaux. Accroître significativement la production de céréales et du bétail pour instaurer la sécurité alimentaire dans le Sahel. Accroître significativement aussi la production du soja, de maïs, des produits laitiers et de la volaille dans la zone de savane guinéenne. Accorder la priorité aux programmes agricoles sensibles à la nutrition. Nous ne saurons terminer notre propos sans lancer un appel pour mettre fin aux conflits sociopolitiques, protéger les populations contre l'insécurité et renforcer les systèmes de santé et de protection des populations vulnérables face aux crises sanitaires. Je vous remercie, Madame.
Thank you very much. Sir. And we do apologize for those who have indicated that they would have liked translation. Just at a very high level, Mr. Ngade, reminding us the importance of self-sufficiency as a key foundation for a resilient food system. He's highlighted some fruit and vegetables, for example, like bananas and root vegetables. He's cautioned us to reduce the import of cereals. He's asked us to focus on local production of food so that we can achieve food security. He has also said there's a very loud call for us to focus on protecting the population as we look at the health implications and how we can protect the health of the population. Of course, as Mr. Nga is also connecting this back to the pandemic and the lessons that we've learned thus far. Sir, thank you very much. I've got literally 1 minute left for this session. So I want to squeeze in one quick question to each of you. Madame Karabo, I'm going to start off with you. What is the one thing that you think we have to get right if we're going to build in food equity in the food system for farmers? If we're going to get food equity, what is the one thing that you believe we need to get right?
Thank you so much. I have to reiterate myself by saying food is a product in the marketplace, and it is the sole source of livelihoods for the farmers. So when we are dealing with it, or when we are planning for it, we should plan for it as such. It is their sole source of livelihoods such that when you snatch it from them, you have sucked life out of them, and you have declared a death sentence for them. So for me, let us look at the efficiency and the regulation of the food market and the food trade in a manner that respects and promotes the dignity and the livelihoods of the farmers as core players in the entire value chain. They shouldn't be facilitated to be frustrated, to be killed, because we are doing it now, not knowing that we are the ones who have made them stuck in that poverty and trapped them in that poverty.
Madam, thank you very much. Let's not snatch livelihoods out of the hands of our farmers. Let's be robust about the efficiency of our systems, and let's make sure that farmers have their dignity intact. Mr. Nga, a final comment from you. One thing that you think we could get right to build food equity in the food system for our farmers. Just one. Over to you, sir.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que pour arriver à équilibrer le système alimentaire, il faut agir sur les chaînes de valeur. Il faut renforcer les chaînes de valeur, et à ce niveau, nous devons insister sur la transformation des produits locaux. Et l'autre levier, même si c'est une chose, c'est insister sur, appuyer sur les femmes et les jeunes, parce que c'est un potentiel énorme. Merci.
Thank you very much, sir. It is a focus on value chains. It's ensuring that we have a transformation of local products and that we don't leave women and young people behind, because that is where the potential lies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to close off and round off this roundtable with a massive thank you to Madame Agnes Karabo and Mr. Celestin Nga for their contributions to this conversation. We're moving now to commitments. We heard from Dr. Agnes Kalibata that this is our decade of action as we marched towards the Agenda 2030 of the Sustainable Development Agenda. And so we need to focus on actions, and so we need to focus on commitments. And so in this sequence now, where we're going to be focusing on commitments, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome the following speakers who are going to be participating. Mr. Paul Zakaria, if he is with us, I haven't yet seen him, but he is, of course, the Executive Director of the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, ZFU. If he is with us, we will invite him onto the floor. We do have Mr. Chris Muyunda standing by, who is the chair of the CAADP Non-State Actors Coalition, CNC, and so we're going to be hearing from him, and he is on our screen standing by. We are hoping to also hear from Dr. Daniel M. Maluta, the CEO of the Kenya National Farmers Federation, or KENAF. If he is with us, I have not yet seen him on my screen. but we will double check. We are also going to be hearing from Malawi. We're going to try first for Madame Betty Chinyamanyama, the CEO of NASFAM. In her absence, if we do not get Madame Betty, we're going to call on Madame Beatrice Makwenda, who's the head of policy at NASFAM, to focus on those commitments. So let me start off with the faces that I do see on my screen. And let me go to Mr. Chris Muyunda first. Mr. Muyunda, let's get on to some of commitments and actions. The question I'd like to put to you, sir, is what do farmers need from their governments, from their financial institutions, and other value chain actors in order to succeed? What type of commitment and action do farmers need?
Thank you very much, Nozipo, and thank you very much, colleagues. Indeed, for farmers to succeed, it is very important that governments are truthful to their own commitments. And these commitments on our continent have been put together in the document which is called the Malabo Declaration. And the biggest commitment in that declaration has to do with provision of finance, provision of financial support to the agricultural sector. It was agreed in Malabo. All heads of state on the African continent agreed to provide 10% of the national budget to the agricultural sector. That is a major commitment. It is the biggest commitment. The 10% commitment was given in order to allow the agricultural sector to grow. So the heads of state said, we are going to provide 10% to the agricultural sector so that the agricultural sector grows by 6% per year in each of our member states. That was what was agreed. So farmers now must demand to ensure that commitment is provided. In all our member states, is the 10% coming? Is the agricultural sector growing? Okay, so all farmer leaders should look out for those important commitments. Number two, it was also agreed in Malabo that farmers were going to be involved, consulted in policy formulation, in investment policy formulation, to agree, decide on what should be the priorities for investment in a particular country. So farmers need to be at the table to provide their views on those major priorities. I think that a major commitment also, which is crucial, given the important aspect of climate change, which is the reality nowadays, it was agreed within the Malabo document that there would be in each country some outreach programs that will ensure there is support for vulnerable communities as a result of climate change, as a result of drought, as a result of flood, that there will be constant support for such communities that suffer the effects of climate change. It was there. I think an important commitment also, which I do not want to leave out, is the commitment for what is called the biennial review. Every year, 2 years assessment of the performance of the agricultural sector in each one of our countries. When that assessment is done, farmers must ensure they are at the table to comment on the actual performance that they see, so that the performance is not doctored, but is a reality from the views of the farmers themselves. So let me stop here, I think, in terms of the major commitments that we have on the table. Thank you.
It's an excellent way to start off the commitments conversation. A commitment to going back to promises already made. And this is quite important, because what you're highlighting to us is that even before we go into the detail of what you've shared, Mr. Muyunda, is that we need to move beyond declarations. We need to move beyond making promises, and we need to move beyond making commitments, and we need to move towards action. So we had made a promise to put 10% of national budgets aside. The question becomes, have we done so? The promise of ensuring that farmers have a seat at the table and they have a voice in policy formulation. Have we done so? The support for vulnerable communities, and of course the biannual review where we hold each other account to the progress that we say we want to make. So let me see if we have captured everything here by going to, I'm going to call first Madame Betty, if she's in the room with us in Malawi, Madame Betty Chamanyama from NASFAM. Madame, if you are in the room, let me put the question, the very same question to you. What do you think farmers need from their governments and their financial institutions and other value chain actors in order to succeed? Thank you, Madam. I see you are with us. Over to you.
My name is Beatrice Makwenda, and I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Betty Chinyamunyamu, who is not with us. But to come to the question on what is it that farmers really need, I will start off by indicating that as farmers, the decades that we've been partnering with farmers as NASFAM, one thing that is clear is that there is a commercialization agenda even within the smallholder farming community. And because farming is no longer just a way of life, as farmers, they've embraced that farming should be able to meet their household requirements. They should be able to send to school. They should be able to actively engage in the value chains, and not just as producers, but really as partners that are valued in the process. It means that, therefore, for farmers, they are looking for, when they engage in the different value chains, to earn a value that they're able to reinvest in their farming, but also meet the other commitments. And because of these aspirations, from the government point of view, what is more critical is to create a conducive policy environment, an environment where that allows them to access inputs that are well priced for them to meet their production input needs, but also that are very accessible. In many ways, you find that there's a concentration of where agricultural inputs are sold or they are available, and it becomes more difficult for farmers to access them in the remote areas. So they spend a lot on transportation costs and logistics to access such inputs. So if there are private sector investment and other actors within the sector can avail and provide a conducive environment, but also make these services available for farmers so that it is not very costly, because eventually what comes out is that it does affect the price of the outputs. They put in a lot more and then they get very little out of it. Then the second is on public investment based on the commitments that governments made, is also to direct those commitments to areas which would provide catalytic support to the farmers. In this case, extension services. In many cases, farmers would want change in growing either or rearing livestock or growing different crops, but they need to get cutting edge extension and moving with the changing times. So for that to happen, then there has to be investments that is directed to research that is not just done outside the farming zones, but that partners with farmers as also to participate in researching and coming up with the technologies that they can scale up and out within their farming communities. So provision of such advisory and infrastructure, especially in this day and age, where we have technology that can be also a catalyst to them accessing different. The other issue is on infrastructure. In many cases, especially in the rural areas, marketing infrastructure, for example, if you take a horticulture farmer, you find that most of it goes to waste because of lack of either cold rooms or storage facilities that then undermines their access to market. So if the infrastructure can also be provided, then that would be an area where commitments should be directed to that, but also those that are the actors that are participating in there are available. Mostly farmers are looking for financing that embraces also, that is not punitive. Punitive in a way that it's not, the interest rates are not as high, but also the requirements that, for example, if you are requiring for a farmer to access financing or credit facilities, and then you're looking for either title to land, and probably maybe these are things that are already in the process and they're not yet available, but at least there can be some processes that allows them, that can confirm them, as well as allow them to access financing in a space like that. But also financing institutions that recognizes that the seasonality of most of the crops, and that doesn't really say this is 3 months that they would get their, after 3 months or 6 months really, that they would get their proceeds out of it, and then a financing that really recognizes the seasonality of agriculture in this case. And the other issue is, of course, on inclusivity, that we are now going to promote collaborating with either large-scale farmers, collaborating with the impact investors, and then farmers should also be treated as such, and developing models that embrace them in the process. So these are some of the things that I would say what is being looked at, but also approaching agriculture development in general that really improves the position of the farmers in it. Note that if they are producing today and getting maybe 1 kilogram, then tomorrow we should be focusing on improving that to either 10 kilograms, and then you even improving that to where you are improving their position on that, so that at least the value, there's shared value, but also there's trust within the process that embraces the farmers. Those are some of the things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Makwenda. Might I ask anyone who's not speaking to please be muted? I'm getting some feedback, and I know that our audience is wanting to hear everyone clearly. Mr. Muyunda, can I ask you to mute as well, just in case the feedback is coming? I'm not sure from where. But Madam Makwenda, I think it's such a compelling list that you've added onto. One, starting off by reminding us about the commercial agenda, that we need to think beyond farmers playing the role of producers, but also partners, which is a conversation we really need to get into. I loved your emphasis on value chain. The emphasis is on value, and how do we make sure that farmers are able to derive value? You spoke about the policy environment, about technology, about infrastructure, about advisory, but also when we talk financing, that we need to be clear that we want to move away from punitive financing, and we want to make sure that we're looking at financing instruments that take into cognizance the seasonality and the cycles of the different crops that we are speaking about. I do want to maybe just give the room in Nairobi an opportunity to ask a question. I hear that they are really keen to just put a question forward before we get to the very last sequence of our conversation. And so to the team, if there is an individual in Nairobi who would like to put a question to either Madam Makwenda or of course, Mr. Chris Muyunda, who's with us here, would you like to put forward a very brief question, please? Opening up the floor to the participants in Nairobi, please.
Anyone that would like to ask a question or make comments?
All right, I'm checking in again with my colleagues. If I'm not hearing anyone, we are tight on time. I will move it along. But if anybody would like to ask a question, please do let me know, and we will bring in your voice, because this is a conversation that you are also participating in. I see somebody is standing, so allow me to give you the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. My name is Josephat Mokaya, and I am a young farmer in Kenya. I really love what Mr. Muyunda has said, and it kind of got me thinking. Now, that the governments made an agreement that they will set aside 10% of the national budget for agriculture. Now, because I know I speak on behalf of many Kenyan young farmers, and of course I'm here on behalf of East African Farmers Federation, I would want to ask this. I'm a beneficiary of a program by the Kenyan government, which is called the Nebo Youth Program. Actually, when I was reading about it before I applied, what really pushed me to apply for it is, as much as we say that there is a problem of unemployment in Kenya, what pushed me to apply is the fact that there was going to be grants being given to young farmers. But when I joined the program, I realized there will be no grant. Now, I don't know what we will do, but I would wish that when governments make this commitment, they should actually, they should have a mechanism of following it up to make sure that whatever that was agreed upon is followed up. Yeah, that's what I have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's very much in your comment is very much in line with the theme that Mr. Muyunda kicked us off with, which is beyond commitments. We've made these promises already. And I see Kampala, you've got your hand up. I'm going to come to you now. We've made these commitments already. We've made these promises already. And if we really are going to be focusing on a decade of action, something's got to change, and it's got to move beyond the talk towards the action. So thank you for that. I do have a Madam standing up from Uganda. Madam, I'd like to invite you to take the floor. Thank you so much. We are not getting your audio, Madam. To the gentleman in standing next to her, could we please assist her quickly with the audio? We're not hearing you, Madam. Please try again. Still not audible. We're still not audible. So I'm going to ask the team to try and assist Madam. I'm going to go to Malawi very quickly while we are assisting Madam in Kampala. And just to check in the room, is anybody in Malawi who would like to make a comment, to take to the floor, to contribute to this conversation? Alternatively, while we're waiting for, yes, please.
Let me raise the hand.
We can hear you now, Kampala. We can hear you now. Please go ahead. Kampala, we can hear you. And can we ask you to put your camera on, please?
Okay.
Go ahead, Madam. Go ahead. We can hear you now, but if you could please just lift your voice a little bit more. We can't, it's not very loud. Madam, I do apologize. I do apologize. We still cannot hear you. Okay, I'm going to ask the technical team there to please assist. I'm going to keep the conversation going. I have one final question for Mr. for Mr. Muyunda, and a final question as well for Madam Makwenda while we are sorting out the sound in Kampala. We've heard a lot about what governments should do. We've heard a lot about what maybe private sector can do. What can farmers do to contribute to food system transformation? And I'm looking for a very brief and concise answer, but what can farmers do? Because this is an ecosystem. One of the things that Madam Makwenda said is that it's a partnership. It's beyond producers, but as partners as well. So Mr. Muyunda, to you first, what can farmers do?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nosipo. And thank you very much also to the gentleman, Josephat, the young farmer who asked the question. You know, it's almost similar. He's not getting what he expected to get. And so basically, what needs to be done, farmers and in particular farmer leaders need to be smart enough to hold their governments accountable, to hold the large private sector accountable. The large private sector who need to provide a market This is where the farmers are selling their produce. Farmers must ensure they have contracts. People can only be held accountable if there is a contract. Farmer organizations must make sure their producers have contracts with the large-scale private sector off-taker. There has to be a contract, okay? The same with the governments who have committed the 10%. As you know, Nozipo, governments change all the time. Here in Zambia, we just changed the government. We have a new government. It is very important that we remind government leaders, we are waiting for a new Minister of Agriculture, to remind him of the commitments which were made by all governments, to whichever government comes in which country has already signed to, with regard to the 10% in financial packages for farmers. So we as not just sit there. We know what their agreements are, what they are already to make sure that we transform them into local agreements which are ongoing, for which we hold our local leaders accountable all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's short and to the point. I'm going to ask Kampala to please mute themselves or anybody else who's not muted. We're picking up some background noise. Mr. Chris Mayunda, to ask you to mute as well. But a very clear contribution in terms of what farmers associations to do. Exercise your power to hold government and private sector accountable. Work on contracts and offtake agreements, and make sure that even as administrations change, that there's continuity by taking on the job of ensuring that we are putting top of mind the promises that have already been made. Madame Beatrice, a quick comment from you. What can farmers and farmers associations do to ensure that they too are translating commitments into actions when it comes to food systems transformation? Back to you in Malawi, please.
Thank you. First and foremost, we realize that no single farmer can make it in their own. So in these food systems, if they are to change, so the drive that is there already in terms of organizing and mobilizing themselves into farmer organizations, be it associations or cooperatives, that drive, they have to be at the center of it and hold on to it, because it is only through economies of scale that they can have the voice and agency in commanding the value chains. The second one is that, of course, we always say that the power to hold government accountable is with the people. But also there's a flip side that he who comes to equity must have with clean hands. So within the farm organizations and institutions, we should also hold part of our bargain. If we are calling for contract farming, then they should be very limited or zero side selling, so that we can also be trustworthy, and then we can harness partners that can work with us. The other one is we engage from below. Let us pick the low-hanging apples. Within the areas where farmers are operating, there are village square meetings that are taking place that are planning agriculture. Let us be involved. There are marketplaces within the communities that we can define what is sold and harness our own potential through those places. So before we start looking from the capital, let us also organize from below, engage from below, and collaborate from below as we hold our governments accountable. Thank you.
Madam, thank you very much. Let's take on, you remind me of that beautiful Mahatma Gandhi saying that says, be the change you want to see. As I listen to those comments from you, Madame Beatrice, but also saying we do not always have to engage from the capital. We can do both, and we can also re-engage from below, even while we engage from the capital. I do want to say a massive thank you. A massive thank you to Mr. Chris Mayunda. A massive thank you to Madame Beatrice Makwenda, as the head of policy at NASFAM. Both of you bringing in a really robust contribution into this frameworks for commitment conversation, reminding us that we are excellent at making commitments. Perhaps where the gap lies is translating that into action. And if this decade is going to be a decade of action, something has to give. And so I'm going to the final segment of our Farmers Forum. It's now the conversation on regional cohesion. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome now Mr. Ishmael Sunga, who is the Chief Executive Officer of SACAO, the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions, to join us, and Mr. Stephen Muchiri, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Eastern African Farmers Federation, or EAF. Thank you very much for being with us. I am going to ask everybody else to mute. Madam Kirabo, if you could please mute your microphone for me. Kampala, that room in general, can you please mute your microphones for me? I appreciate it very, very much. Mr. Sunga, I'm going to come to you first. We know that there's been a great body of innovation and research on the African agricultural sector. Do you think, however, that research and innovation has been able to really address the pain points of smallholder farmers and really improved the quality of life of farmers? Over to you, sir. Madam Kirabo, if I could ask for you to mute your microphone, or the technical team to mute it on her behalf, please. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nozipo, for the question. As we heard different people speaking, most of what they were saying were not technical issues. We're talking about socio-economic factors, talking about policy issues.
My apologies, there's a lot of background noise and we're struggling to hear you. It's not your sound. I'm getting feedback from the room titled Madame Agnes Kirabo. Thank you very much, it's now muted. Mr. Sunga, our apologies. Back to you again.
Thanks once more, Nozipo. I was just saying, listening to the conversation so far, most of them were not about technical issues. They were about policy issues, they were about socio-economic factors. They were really about many pain points that are not technical that farmers are confronted with. That's a fact. I think the moral of the story is that, in my view, a lot of the challenges that farmers are facing are non-technical in nature. That's the first point. The second point really is, and maybe let me just also illustrate that. Let's take, for instance, where most of the farmers live. They live in the hinterland, which are deficient of basic infrastructure. There are no roads, there's no water systems, no energy, no communication, and anything that guarantees dignity of life. There isn't. It's a major issue. How do you expect increased productivity? How do you expect increased production? And how do you expect increased competitiveness if the basic conditions, production, trademark infrastructure is not there? That's the first point. The second point really is there's been talk about value chain issues, that the farmer always has the lowest value, and yet they bear the greatest amount of risk. And as you go up the chain, those that have a lower risk profile end up taking the goodies, so to speak. So that's one clear illustration, which talks about equity and fairness, even looking at access to factors of production, capital, you name it, finance. There's lack of fairness and equity in that access. Similarly, also in terms of other infrastructure like digital infrastructure, knowledge, there's no democratization of access. But more fundamentally, also, if you look at climate change, they bear the greatest amount of risk, and there is no reward, and they are on the back of the queue when disaster strikes in terms of compensation. Another example, perhaps last example, high cost of production. I mentioned that already because of the infrastructure and other matters. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you look at where the research and innovation is focusing on, it is talking about gadgets. It is talking about how do we have, I'm not saying gadgets are not important. I'm not saying equipment modernization is not important. All I'm saying is that there seems to be a major misalignment between the fundamental needs or pain points of farmers and where research and innovation is focusing. Chris was talking about commitment, and Beatrice talked about commitment. But those are real issues. But is there any research and innovation around dealing with unfulfilled commitments? No, not necessarily by researchers, by ourselves as well. The point being that I think we really need to rethink where innovation and research should focus. It really should be located within the pain points of farmers, some of which I've just articulated over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sunga. I think it's such a well-made point that you've made, the mismatch between the pain point and the solution. And so maybe we have a mismatch of the focus of research and innovation. And, you know, it was excellent to hear you saying, just having listened, what we've heard is that these pain points are non-technical. And so it's the hypothesis has proven itself in the last hour that we have spent together. So Mr. Muchiri, I want to come to you maybe with a different question, sir. And that is, if we pause to consider the fact that many of the issues that have been raised that affect smallholder farmers are issues that are cross-border and transboundary in nature, trade, climate, as an example. And because of this, one would assume that we really need to take into consideration regional realities and regional contexts. The question to you, sir, is this. As regional farmer organizations, are we really doing a good job of coordinating and ensuring that there's cohesion at a regional level as we deal with farmer issues? Your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Nozi, for this question. I think first and foremost is that we need to expand the space of active players in regional trade. I think farmers for the longest time have been missing out. And when you look at what's happening at the regional space, for example, in East Africa, you have a very high import bill that has actually been mentioned. And this serves for me as a huge opportunity for import substitution. Work that EAFF has done or has attempted to do in terms of trying to identify those particular opportunities. From the intra-East Africa trade perspective, you'll find that the value of that trade is also very low. But you're moving a lot of product, you know, and there's a lot of pre-harvest and post-harvest losses as a result of climate change, like you mentioned, high production costs, and market facilitation. I think the challenge here has been around capacity for cross-border trade, which we have attempted to do, but not sufficiently. We've also found that there's a challenge with respect to facilitating regional trade. What do I mean by this? There's a time we attempted to just look at just piecing out access to services. If I want to move product from Nairobi to Kampala, who would transport that for me? Who will insure that for me? Who would finance that for me? Who would tell me the costings for that? That is actually missing. We did that study in 2016, but it needs to be actually updated for it to actually make sense. So there's a lot of information asymmetry that needs to have some kind of convergence. Then there's the issue of policy. You know, policy has to transform to investments. When you look at policy from a regional perspective in East Africa, we're not seeing investments. And it's unfortunate that, for example, at the regional level, policies are actually stuck. We have laws that have been passed by parliament, but not assented to by the heads of state. For example, we have a regional law. I mean, for example, in East Africa, we have a policy on agriculture. And as a federation, we actually pushed for a law for cooperatives to ensure that you actually have cooperatives having joint ventures and working together. But this law was passed in 2016. It's stuck, not signed, assented into law. And like I said, the issue of low investment. Now, what do we actually see here? One, we need to have a process where we are documenting these opportunities in terms of business. I talked about the import bill. We have looked at where the products are coming from, the value and the time they come in through the year, the quantity of that. How can we actually be able to present this as an opportunity to a potential investment? And sometime before the pandemic, we were actually partnering with the East Africa Business Council to actually see whether we can have a biennial regional conference on agriculture investments, because we have to we have to support governments. I know governments have committed 10%, but we have to figure out how do you actually support them to actually even be able to meet that 10%. So that is the reality that we are actually looking at. And as a regional farm organization, we believe that we are in a strategic position to be able to, but we need actually support to be able to develop, mutual value chain partnership ecosystems, because we need to move to partnerships. Even this research, they need to be part and parcel of these partnerships, because we have seen weaknesses in research towards policy. There's a lot of research around technical issues, production issues, but there's low research on policy. There's low research on business. Private sector is not investing in research in Africa, as compared to, in other jurisdictions. And we believe that if we're able to build this kind of an ecosystem, and we have been able to demonstrate that as a regional farm organization. In Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda, we've been able to mobilize actors in finance, insurance, in logistics, in offtake. We've actually been able to even provide contracts to farmers to be able to have predictability, in terms of what they're actually doing. But in essence, we actually need political support. I think that's the underlying statement.
Mr. Muchiri, it's you brought in the view of the regional opportunity if we were to expand that space, and how we could improve the capacity for cross-border trade. But it all rests on information asymmetry, or getting at least information symmetry. But also what I'm hearing you saying is that economic policy that actually translates into economic benefit, such as investment. And it goes right back to the point that Mr. Sunga made earlier, which was really about we are innovating around the technical, we're not innovating around policy. So Mr. Sunga, I noticed that when Mr. Muchiri is speaking, you were taking copious notes. So I know you probably have some thoughts and reactions to what he's shared. So I welcome those thoughts and reactions as we take your final comment. But also, if you could also comment on, are we doing enough around innovating around policy? Do we know how to live innovatively into the policy space? My sense, having moderated conversations on the continent for over a decade now, is that once we have a policy, we don't go back to keep reviewing and holding that policy account to whether it is sharp enough to continue doing the job that it was envisioned for it to do. And so as much as we will review and reflect on other things, we don't do as much on policy. And that because of that, we probably don't innovate as much as we can. I'd love your thoughts on that as a final quick comment from you, Mr. Sunga.
Thanks, Nosi, for quite a few thoughts there. Let me start with why I might have been taking notes when Steve was speaking. The point really is, I was resonating with Steve, is quite often we think that research and innovation belongs to researchers. And I think it's time we take it and then share it. Because we don't do research in the way that academics do. Therefore, the results of what we do ourselves, like Steve was illustrating the work they've done on mutual value chain partnerships and how it works. But from a researcher's perspective, maybe it has not been proven. There was no clear methodology, and it has been not verified externally and as a publishable thing. So it does not hold. The point being that how do we measure the output of research and innovation? It should be measured in terms of how it changes people's lives, not how it is published in a journal and become unacclaimed, even if it was a failure. As long as it is well documented, it is acclaimed as a research piece, then you are good to go. We should change that and also take away research and innovation, not taking it away completely, but we are also, and farmers are also innovators in their own right. Acknowledge the value of what they are bringing to the table. They are not beneficiaries or recipients or target groups of research and innovation. Final point perhaps is that innovation is, there's much more about innovation in institutions, in organizing, in ways of doing things. You can really change things policy-wise just by innovatively tampering with the fiscal and monetary arrangements, and it could unleash the economic potential of farmers. So it's much more maybe in the abstract than it is in the It is much more on how you can organize, how you can think. For instance, the fundamental problem we're dealing with is the aging nature of the farming population we have. So there should be the focus of innovation. How do we bring in the younger generation of agripreneurs? Where is the innovation around that? That is why I was saying locating it to where things are strategic and where things are ahead most. Fragmentation is a major problem for farmers because of their geographic diversification, scatteration. How do you use digital technology to try and aggregate for economic power? The final point, this one I promise now, is blockchain. If you're talking about openness and transparency in value chains, traceability, making sure that value is shared equally, there's a blockchain for you. But guess what? It's not used for that. It is used for other things. I'm sure there are quite a few ideas that innovators and great thinkers could actually put at the table, together with those also with the practical flair of things, such as farmers and ourselves. Mix it, and then we come out with a better output and product. Over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sunga. I think one of the things that has really stood out is research and innovation does not belong to researchers only. I've just gotten a message that we need to wrap up our session. So I'm going to ask Mr. Muchiri for a quick final comment, because I know you had a final comment that you wanted to share with us, sir, and then we'll wrap up straight after that. Thank you very much. To you, sir.
Thank you very much. What I wanted to say is that numerous opportunities abound in research and innovation. We just have to prime them to respond to demand. There's actually need to explore other avenues to harness research and innovation. I think my colleague has talked about farmers as being sources of research and innovation, as well as private sector. I think the challenge we have is that we don't have funding to scale up innovation. Yeah, I think for me, the capacity to innovate is hindered by costs to do that, lack of government support, lack of even sufficient data. We're talking about blockchain. We don't have data and sufficient information to help us actually do that. And the final one is that is partnership. We can't innovate unless these researchers and innovators sit with the rest of us and form partnerships that are mutual. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The final words of action: invest and partner. And that's how we begin to change the reality of farmers on the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to moderate the Farmers Forum. We've listened to farmers from around the world and from across the continent as well, engaging on pertinent issues, bringing in the voices of farmers into the conversation and making clear what is required for us to really move towards the pathway to recovery and towards resilient food systems, which is our overarching theme. It's a massive thank you from me to all of the speakers and participants in the Farmers Forum. As I hand back now to my colleagues in Nairobi, I will see you a bit later on this afternoon when we begin to talk about equitable livelihoods in the plenary session. For now, it's goodbye from me and back to the team in Nairobi.
Thank you very much. This has been an interesting Farmers Forum. We're learning from each of this forum, and I think there are a lot of things that we need to take forward from this year's forum as we plan the next AGRF 2022. But what is most important are the key issues that have been raised. How do we take those conversations forward? And I call on all of us who have spoken today to say, please send us your notes, send us your comments, so that we're able to incorporate this into the final communique from the AGRF 2021, and then we will take it up from there. So thank you to our farmers in the room. Thank you to all the other farmers. Thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much.